Creepshow is a 1982 anthology horror film directed by George A. Romero. Growing up, the comic book of the same name had a big influence on both Romero and Stephen King. King decided to pen the screenplay of the film and even have a small role in one of the segments. The final result is your not-so-average Stephen King horror flick, as this one is not based off a prior novel. Hey guys, and welcome back to Garage Stephen-King-a-thon, where every day for the month of October, we revisit a Stephen King movie. And today we're going to talk about Creepshow. So much like I said in the introduction, Creepshow is not really based off a prior Stephen King novel. It's not like The Shining or Carrie. Instead, this is Stephen King writing the screenplay directly. So it's a little more interesting, a little something different here. Romero and King's sensibilities to horror are very much influenced by the comic books, so that's why they decided to collaborate and make a spooky kind of horror movie. And I use the term spooky here because I don't really find it terrifying or horrific. It's not like Carrie or The Shining, where it's actually kind of a psychological horror thrill. This is very much what I like to call a segue horror film. This is the kind of horror film you show to your children and they'll wrap themselves around in a blankie and watch it with one eye open and one eye closed. It's very child appropriate, I would think, while there are some scenes that are pretty graphic, but I would show this to my kid. I don't know, maybe I'm a fucked up parent. Well, I'm not a parent, thank God, but if I were one, I'd be a fucked up one. Even the poster of this film is highly suggestive of this being a more child-appropriate horror movie. We have the DVD cover. Where is it? I'll come back. 1 second, folks. I'm back. Sorry, guys, went to grab the DVD, so here's the DVD here. If you look on the poster, it's written Admissions, Children and Adults, suggesting that this is a more family-friendly horror movie. Can't believe I did that marathon just for that. But that's what I do for this channel. Let's talk about the segments one by one. So it opens up and you have the prologue. In the prologue, you have a child who I think is played by Stephen King's real child. But he's reading the Creepshow comic books and his dad is pissed. He's like, I don't want you reading that trash! And he throws it in the garbage. And you see the mascot of the Creepshow comic books, this Grim Reaper. And he's done with a marionette, which Tom Savini, the great Tom Savini, did the special effects on that marionette, frequent collaborator with George Romero. The first segment is called Father's Day, where you have this couple that move into this house, and every year, the previous owner visits their husband's grave for Father's Day, and we soon find out that she does that because she murdered her husband on Father's Day. He kept repeating, until she got fed up and killed the old ball bag. This was a great introduction to the feel of what Creepshow is. Certain camera trickery is very fun. The cinematography is very flashy. I'm thinking of that shot where we first see that zombie hand pop out. It goes from natural lighting to a more artificial lighting with blues and reds and stuff like that. And whenever there's a flashback, it's framed like a comic book where you have bubbles and stuff like that. Great introduction to what Creepshow is. Some great twists in here as well. When the zombie twists the girl's head, does a 180 with her head, I was like, ooh, you really heard the crackling of bones there. And then the ending, which is a very cheesy, oh my god, ending, where the dead husband is carrying the wife's severed head on a plate, and he's like, I found my cake, and I expected things to turn into a sitcom where it's like, ha, woo, woo, thank you for being a friend, bum, bum, bum. Yeah, that would be a fucked up episode of the Golden Girls, huh? Next segment, you have the lonesome death of, what's his name, Jordy DeVille, the lonesome death of Jordy DeVille, which is the one starring Stephen King. Stephen King plays a farmer who's taking care of his family's farm when a meteor crashes onto the farm. Had a vibe very similar to Color Out of Space, which got recently adapted into a movie starring Nicolas Cage. had a very similar feel and vibe with the colors and all that stuff. But I really like this segment. This segment was a lot of fun, and a lot of people criticize Stephen King's acting, which I understand. He's not the best actor out there, let's be real. However, it kind of works. He's like really cheesy and overacting. Usually when a writer or a director casts themselves in a movie, it's always like an egotistical role where he's like the writer who will save everyone's life. I'm looking at you, M. Night Shyamalan. But in this role, Stephen King plays like a schlub, a goofball, someone who's not too bright. And he hams it up, which I don't mind. I want more movies with Stephen King. Whenever they make a horror movie, I think they should do to Stephen King what they did to Marvel with Stan Lee. How Stan Lee would show up in every Marvel movie. Whenever they make a Stephen King movie, even if it's a small role, I want to see Stephen King show up for a cameo. I think it will make every Stephen King movie better. Other than that, I thought this was the most memorable segment of the series. Not the best, but definitely the most memorable. Whenever I think back on Creepshow, I think automatically of the Stephen King segment. Acting aside, it's just very effective. It's small, it's short, happens primarily in one area. Not many people other than Stephen King's character. So it really works for me. This is one of the better ones. So next you have Something to Tide You Over, which is about a couple, and the wife is cheating on the husband, and what the husband does is that he buries both the guy she's cheating with and her in the sand so that the high tide can drown them. And this one stars Leslie Nielsen, everyone's favorite Leslie Nielsen. I love Leslie Nielsen, of course, Airplane, Naked Gun, the scary movies, but this is a serious Leslie Nielsen. And Leslie Nielsen was a serious actor before Airplane happened. And that's why he works in Airplane. It's because the joke is he's playing it super straight. It's almost like he doesn't realize he's in a comedy, but the audience does. And this is him showing his dramatic capabilities. And he truly is good in this movie. I love Leslie Nielsen in this movie. Just a sick bastard. And I wanted to sock him one, which is kind of the point of this segment. Other than that, I love the shot of Ted Danson's character drowns in the high tide, and there's this shot of him underwater. But I feel like this segment was a little long, and I feel like you could have cut it down a bit. There's a point where you think it's going to end, but it just goes on for a few more minutes, and I feel like that natural ending would have been better. But other than that, another solid segment. Next, you have The Crate, which is about a university professor who hates his wife. His wife is a cranky old ball bag, and he discovers that there's this crate in his university that has a weird gorilla creature, and he plans on feeding his wife to the gorilla, which I didn't like this one as much. I feel like all the characters were a little despicable, where it was to the point where I was like, I don't know who to root for in this. The wife was like so annoying and always like, it's one thing to be a loudmouth, but it's another thing to put your husband down in public like that. I felt she was just like a bitch. And then meanwhile, the husband is such a pushover. It's like, okay, look, you don't need to feed her to a gorilla. You just have to divorce her or man up. I felt like he was a bit of a coward, and I just couldn't really grasp onto a character in this. I will say the performance of the wife, who's the cranky old ball bag, I felt like she was good. Like, her performance, as much as I didn't like her character, that was the point of it as well. I liked her performance. There's this part where she does this really lengthy monologue, nagging at her husband, doing these very graphic images, like he should take his testicles and attach them to his ears. I thought that was all very fun. I just felt like the segment was too long, and after a while I was like, why do I like any of these characters? Who do I want to see come out of this situation alive? I don't know. I feel like this was probably the weakest one. But that is made up for with the final segment, which right up with the Stephen King Meteor segment, this is my favorite one, and that's the cockroach segment. It's called They're Creeping Up on You. This guy who's an asshole with OCD gets a bug infestation in his apartment, and cockroaches start crawling from every corner, and that disrupts his OCD. I really like this segment. I like how his apartment is very spacious and white, and whenever there's one cockroach, it disrupts the whole flow of the apartment. Some very good use of contrast there. And that final scene from that segment where the guy's laying there unconscious and you think he's dead, but all of a sudden these bugs explode from his chest and they crawl out of him. Very effective imagery, very good puppet design by the great Tom Savini. Speaking of which, then we jump into the epilogue where Tom Savini has a cameo. He's the garbage man taking out the garbage, and we realize that the son is using a voodoo doll to torture his dad, who wouldn't let him read the comic books. And that concludes Creepshow. Going segment by segment, the movie is so fast-paced that even if there is a segment that you don't like for me, I didn't like the crate one, it moves so fast that when there's one that doesn't work, the next one works. There's more hits than misses. I would say it's like, how many segments we got here? I liked all of them except the crate. So that's a pretty good score right there. You're almost at 100%. And that's not even to say that the crate was bad. Like, I like the gorilla design and I liked some of the gruesome kills in there. I just felt like storytelling-wise, it was the least interesting. But other than that, this is a quality film, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm happy to revisit a George Romero movie. If you guys were with us last year, we did Zombie-thon, where we did a zombie movie every day for the month of October. And we talked a lot about George Romero. Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Land of the Dead, Diary of the Dead, Survival of the Dead. And it feels good to revisit George Romero's film catalog one more time here. I love the director. One of my biggest regrets, I was really contemplating on going to Montreal Comic-Con one year, and he was the special guest there, and I think that was 2 years before he passed away, which is unfortunate. That just goes to show, guys, when there's an artist you want to go see or support or see what they do, go for it, okay? I've been looking at, especially with this pandemic, it's like you never know when shit might close again. And so, yeah, just go support an artist that you feel like is on the brink of death is what I'm saying. Don't do that. Support them before they die, well before they die, while they're still up and healthy, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you guys tomorrow, where we'll be talking about a more traditional Stephen King adaptation. Thank you.
Creepshow, the most fun you'll ever have being scared.